welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming. And then today, the presentation is, the title is Manufacturing Identity, Peasant Workers' Spatial Production in China. And it's actually heavily based on my dissertation. In the morning, like 7 or 8 o'clock, the village head will bang the bell. So the whole village can could hear that. And then they would gather at a place. The village head would say that you two go to a certain field and do this. You two, you'll have the cart and to get the manure and then send to another field. Yeah, things like that. I also have the living memory that once at the end of the year, my mom told me that let's go to get our food distribution or the grain distribution after a year's work. So we went there, and then I was at that time already old enough to ask that why just you bring a little bucket this size, a bucket. She said that would be enough. Actually, we won't even be able to fill it. And when we got there, actually we got like a quarter of the bucket full. That's the end of the year distribution. The reason was that during the year, because we didn't have enough to eat, so we borrow from the commune, the village commune, and then they gradually give that. So it would be considered a good year and a good village if at the end of the year, for the distribution time, you can still get that much. So for the bad villages or very poor villages, at the end of the year, you go there, you will be told that you owe like the village 500 kilograms or something like that. So, but at that time I didn't know that was called poor or something. So at that time in the village, the only way for peasants kid to be out to be really somebody is to get the college education, to pass the national matriculation examination to be a college student. And I can tell you now that all my cousins who didn't pass the matriculation examination and then got to college, they are all end up being peasant workers, all of them. For some still are peasant workers, some, for some time in their life.
Did the conditions change from what you remember, or it's the same? What is your feeling?
It changes, yeah. And I will touch that later. The second story is that when I came to the United States, it was in the year of 2003. And in the winter break of 2005, I decided to go back to China to visit my family and friends. So as a good Asian person, you bring gifts, right? And so as the first person in my extended family to come to the United States to pursue a degree, I want to take gifts to friends and relatives. I would never have imagined that the selecting gifts would be connected to my dissertation on identity. So I went to Walmart on a December night, hoping to get an idea on what to buy for them by browsing the shelves, in much the same way that Dissertot describes the wisdom of housewives planning meals on the basis of what they can find in the stores. However, there were clear differences. My international trip and my graduate student assistantship meant that I could only choose inexpensive and easy-packed gifts, reflecting aspects of the United States. So small, inexpensive, but a piece of the United States, right? All these three aspects. So as you might have imagined, I browsed the entire store in a Christmas spirit with Christmas carols, and for the first time I noticed that made in China products that have made me so proud of my motherland had now put me into such a difficult situation, because seemingly there was nothing I could buy that was not from my homeland. How can I show this genuine Americanness? After consulting other Chinese international students, I ended up buying more than 20 Hershey family-sized chocolate bars, like this size. Okay, the good thing is that at Christmas they have reduced the price for that. Originally it's like $6, now it's like $2. And ordered more than 40 bottles of Alaska deep sea fish oil online. More than $40. You can see. So because of the ethnographic research is all about this field. Yeah. Yeah.
I think that.
And then I was not the only one who do that. So later on, I noticed that all the Chinese students, when they go back home, it's either chocolate or fish oil or both. And then also sometimes they add this American ginseng, you know, and that's something that is sold so cheap in the United States and valued so high in China. So we are using this kind of international comparative advantage to buy these gifts. Nevertheless, the changes from the Euro feeling of national pride to the personal difficulty had a dramatic, strange effect on me. If consumer items that suggest US genuineness are made in China and elsewhere, where is American identity made? And then can we even claim a kind of detached, pure American identity? And in this sense too, to China, can we claim a kind of Chinese identity? And if we think about this, it is always said made in China, but it's never said made in China by whom. Therefore, can it be connected to these makers or producers in China? And in that way, is Americanness and Chineseness, and this even internationalness, is connected to these localized laborers in China. So that's why suddenly my bewilderness in Walmart store was actually leading to this kind of rethinking of this internationalization, globalization, and localization. And by the way, at that time, you know, that was just like a flash, because I was so fabulously buried in Foucault, Desserteau at that time. I was thinking of this wonderful post-structural and post-modern world in which we do not worry about these prizes, you know, only when after you have this 3-hour discussion at your late night class and then rush to Walmart, you start to think, okay, we have to make this $40 work so that we can last 1 whole week with this. You know, so these are all connected together to me in a way to think about identity, not only in the sense of how to linguistically construct identity, not to think about it in a kind of social way, but to think deeper about this, what is social made of? In what way and in what roles materiality actually plays in this so-called social? From 2008 to 2010, a serial suicide, I got the term from, you know, by changing a serial murder. A serial suicide of 14 Chinese laborers, migrant workers, worked in Foxconn, the largest electronics enterprise that makes Apple, Dell, Nintendo, Sony PlayStations, jumps from the top of their factory building. Consequently, the secrecy of the Apple's production and the secrecy of the factory were exposed to the public for the first time through a guerrilla video shot on a camera like the ones made in similar factories. The workers, members of a huge migrant group known in China as peasant workers, have grown in their importance to the world's economy, and as one of the dirty secrets of the era of corporate globalization, the digital revolution and the network society. Everyone becomes the captive audience. You have to look, because it's in a major shopping area. And then the Chinese here says that, please pay attention to the road conditions and drive safely. So yeah, it's so dialectical. It asks you to do two things at the same time. And exposing who peasants are similarly exposing the current China, the new digital age, and the contemporary internationalized capitalist production. This presentation is based on my dissertation and investigates class identity of Chinese peasant workers through a materialist identity production process. I examine the roles materiality plays in the production of class identity. More specifically, I examine how wages and dormitories mediate class identity production. Methodologically, I integrate institutional ethnography with cultural geography's understandings of space. In addition, I borrow from materialist dialectics, feminist understandings of gender identities and class identities, and postmodern theorists' understandings of everyday experiences. I integrated all these diversified approaches and theories together to conduct a materialist investigation of peasant workers' class identity. Why did I choose wages and dormitories? It's also kind of like a discourse of peasant workers' lives intersected with the discourse of my life. Because in 2005, when I went back home, my father was actually thinking of buying a building in a county. And then it's a small city actually. And then at that time, he was asking me if I could support him financially, but then I could not. So it's a moment when you are fascinated with this post-structural idea of how free culture can go and how free you can argue different discursive spaces, and the actually lived space of, if you are not going to buy this, you are going to continue to live in a village house where you do not have the air condition, the heating system in winter and air conditioner in summer. And at that time, both my grandparents were still alive, and then they were like in their 80s. So it feels that this traditional responsibility of filial piety, that you need to do something, especially that after your college education, you have worked several years, but you have used all your money to go to the United States to continue to be a student. And then after these 4 or 5 years, you are still a student, while others have already been earning money for the family. So at that time, this kind of everyday experience, together with this postmodern theory, becomes a disruptor, the same way as Stuart Hall has talked about that. How are you going to negotiate the space between that you can so legitimately talk about this post-modern theory as if you have been a learned scholar, and on the other hand, you can do nothing to help your family financially. Is there any way to theoretically reconcile or rethink about the discrepancies of these two parts? Let me give a quick review of the history of the the Chinese peasant workers formation. In the 1978, the Cultural Revolution was ended, and then Deng Xiaoping was out, and then he started to say that we need this economic revolution so that Chinese people will no longer be super. So he just started to change this Shenzhen from a village of only 30,000 people into a city, and then the first economic special zone in China, specialized economic zone in China. And then they start to get maybe repair works, or some kind of maybe just raise hens and then sell eggs to Hong Kong to get the first bucket of gold so that they can continue. Because when the provincial government reported that to the central government said that, okay, all your ideas about this reform is really good, but the central government cannot give you any money because we are also super. So just to solve your financial problem. And then, because of the industrial sectors in these new areas is like mushrooming, they need more workers, and then the peasants originally working this agricultural business, just migrated to the cities to continue to work there. Their migration from the countryside to the city is not without any kind of restriction, because after 1949, the cities were under the planned economy, and the cities were designed or relegated by the central government to concentrate on developing the industries, and the countryside people, they could not go to the cities. So even if you want to just be in a city for one day, you need to ask your village head to give you the letter of introduction. And then with that letter of introduction, you go to the upper level local government, and then change that to the upper level, the extended village, and then only with that you can go to the city. And if you happen to lose that, you have the risk of being arrested. So in order to understand peasant workers' identity, it is important to consider what the studies of identity have already covered, and even more importantly, have failed to cover. As we have known, identity is at the heart of knowing who is in relation to a society. So many scholars such as Judith Butler, Deleuze and Guattari, Derrida, Horkheimer and O'Donnell, Stuart Hall have provided insights in our understanding of identity. However, there has been a stark omission in addressing the roles of materiality in social construction of identity. While identity is often considered overtly or covertly through a social construction process, materiality is often perceived as irrelevant to such a process. And then this materiality is also connected to, say, in the field of communication, together with this advancement of communication technology and also the transportation technology. We are saying that space actually does not matter anymore. With this optic fabric, we can reach any part of the world just by clicking our mouse. And also, the public transportation is so good. So my dissertation asks two major questions. What are the roles of materiality in identity? And the second, what is the relationship between materiality and sociality? So basically, I do not want to consider materiality and sociality still in a binary kind of binary pair. Instead, I want to just see the inner connections between materiality and sociality. Therefore, materiality is at the center of my conceptualization of social production of identity. What then does it mean to say materiality? What do we perceive this watch as, or anything like this building? In here, I borrowed from the Marxist geographer David Harvey and Don Mitchell a lot. So they, instead of reifying materiality as things, they say that anything is a process of labor. So it has been produced. Therefore, although I have bought it, I'm wearing it, it still reflects a certain kind of human social relations that has been used, has been arranged so that the production can happen. Therefore, materiality stands for a certain kind of social relation organization. And also it is a social relation of labor. The social relation through which labor has been organized into a certain form for its production and its current interactions with other entities. And number three, despite its physical presence, it is filled with social meanings of relations of power and conflict. Thus, materiality is fraught with social power relations and class struggles, and therefore is deeply relevant to formation of class identity. It is in this sense that materiality becomes part of sociality in the reformulation of social construction of class identity. Let me give you one example that is used by Don Mitchell. So he is saying that the result of a bus is actually a thing that has already been thinified, solidified. But then in this solidified thing, it reflects the different social relations. First, the workers have to be organized in a certain way so that production can happen. This is what Marxists would welcome to say. Yeah, you finally said something we want to say. But then also, together with that, the thing actually is a compromise of all these different requirements. For example, its aesthetic value, its usability for the passengers, and its maybe drivability or safety issue for the drivers. In this sense, a thing itself, just as one thing, is a combination of different contradictions of social relations. And also, it is importantly that it seems that it appeals to everyone. For everyone that is using the bus, there's a different degrees of satisfaction, but this satisfaction is, to everyone. But then it invites the question as for to what extent it represents different social groups and different people's desire. Designed by Dorothy Smith, first termed as the sociology for women and then expanded to a sociology for people, institutional ethnography was formed against the conventional sociology, which reifies ruling relations of the society. Smith's IE is an alternative mechanism of knowledge production, and it is specially designed to view different ruling relations as both embedded in the everyday lives and can be explicated so that everyday living can be transformed. Okay. What I did for institutional ethnography is that I added the spatial dimension, or emphasized the spatial dimension. Because Smith used the two key terms. One is the actual links. So basically he's not saying that what you tell me about you do, but then what actually is done. So For example, let's say Singapore as a space. You know, I'm not going to interview Prime Minister now how the Singapore's economy is growing and what are the factors. Although, yeah, that could be a good supplement. But then I can also just notice that what ports, what kind of material products have been imported from other spaces. So in this way, that the establishment of any space is actually connected to other spaces. That no single space can stand alone by itself. So by translocal, he means that what is happening on one site is not restricted to that site. Instead, any particular action is necessarily linked to other places. Therefore, they are translocal in their production process. However, despite such sensitivity towards other sites and spaces, Smith still strictly considers sites as rigid physical locations. My conception of a spatialized IE, however, considers the very formation of a connected sites through the laboring actions. So in spatialized IE, both spaces and human subjects becomes products and producers as well. How? Think about this Shenzhen first as a fishing village of 30,000 people, and then 29 years later, the population became like 30 times of the original size. It is maybe only in this very quick urbanization process that we can see space as something literally grows, as space as something that changes. Space at the different moments of these changes, the characters of the space changes as well. The functionality of the city, and then the different sections of the city. And if you go to the peasant workers' dorms, you will notice that although the public media is saying that okay, these guys first restricted by household registration system, will only stay in the villages. Now they can work in the cities. It proves that China is improving or progressing really, really fast. But then if you really stay there and then talk with these people and then experience their lives as they do, you'll notice that for each year, maybe they won't venture like 3 miles of their workplace radius. So basically, it is mobility doesn't exist. Mobility exists between the countryside to the city, and once they are in the city, they're stuck in their dorms and in their factories, and then they work there. And then they are mutually formative, this space and labor. And this is important because by expanding IE into spatialized IE, I have gained the methodological power to investigate spaces through a production process. So basically I'm thinking that if person's identity is connected to space, to materiality, and if materiality is already a network of different social relationships, and if we can also prove that space is also this kind of social relationship, then we have a kind of semi-fluid state in which the people can interact with this space, or they have always been interacting with the space. Only that theorization can include that kind of interactions within the framework. I interviewed some people, I stayed in their dorms for 2 weeks. I experienced the hot summer in Shenzhen, which is at the southern tip of China, similar weather as in here. And then I also experienced their working conditions, and then they have a ceiling fan that looks exactly like the size of this projector. And then in a dome where 10 peasant workers squeeze into the bunk beds, only that fan is working. Swerving head for the whole night.
Can I ask you,
yeah, please.
How did you get access? Isn't it like difficult to enter these spaces because they're so guarded? Was
Very
it like
interesting.
Illegal way of getting there?
Yeah, actually, my wife's brother works in the cell phone production factory. He's the manager of that factory. So he introduced one of the managers. He introduced several lower level factories to me. So I got the access through that. Otherwise, I want to be.
How do you present yourself as a researcher, or you were like?
I presented myself in quite different ways. Sometimes I tell them that, I'm from the countryside. I speak Shanxi dialect, and if without this education, I'll be together with you doing the same thing. And then I understand how countryside is like. But then sometimes I would distance myself to the managers of the factory. I would say that my brother-in-law introduced me here. So actually for your managers, I don't even know him. So just
So
talk
you
to
were
him.
pretending that you're interested to get a job there, basically.
No. I tell them that
Just
I'm
visiting.
researching. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And also they are actually quite open once they know that you are not going to reduce their pay. And I was thinking that why should a capitalist put their factory in China instead of in the United States? Why should this globalized outsourcing be such a trend for all the capitalists? Is that because that they suddenly began to love China? No, it's because that in China, because the wage level is so low, so that they can actually use a lot of laborers and then very simple machines. In this way, you see the differences between the relationship between this constant capital and the variable capital. When the variable capital is really, really low, let's use the everyday term. When the wage is really low, they are not going to use the sophisticated machines because they can simply hire more workers to do the simple work. See this one, he's doing the USB wire, and this is the only machine that he is using. You would think that in China, when it produces almost more than 90% of the world's cell phone and its accessories, it must be very good. But then this is the only machine that he is using. And this guy, each box has 1,000 parts. So when he finishes two bags, he will go to the manager to ask another 2 bags. What he does is just to put this one through this one all day long, all night long, because the factory will never stop. So they have 2 shifts. Finished. USB. So variable capital does not go parallel with constant capital, and neither of them is static. The process is mutual spinning for a better overall organization. In this way, organization is also part of it. Indeed, wage as a variable capital is a variable and a floating material social management institution, through which working conditions, constant capital can rally its power and be as bad as workers can endure. So basically, in a factory, one of the factories I visited, only 2 weeks before my visit, they installed a kind of huge fan, this usually used for industrial purposes of cooling down machines. And before that, they didn't even have that. And every day in the morning for the morning shifts, the general manager will have a meeting for the managers. But then all the workers will stand there and listen. And then for the previous, like 1 month, 2 women workers fainted in the morning before they started to work because of their, you know, their sweatshop. Basically, it's really hot there. So basically, also this constant capital of how the factory is arranged, what kind of comfort equipment will be considered necessary, is also kind of connected with this wage, connected with this large-scale society, connected with how laws are going to do this kind of, how laws are going to regulate this. Thus, in my expression of the meaning of wage, wage as variable capital is not a binary pair of constant capital, which presumably stand still and ready to be transferred to the final products. Rather, wage forms a material social regulation institution in which peasant workers' everyday activities are formed. When they come to the city, they still bear this Chinese name of Nongmingong, which literally translates into peasant workers. So basically, every time this name is called, it's a reminder that, you know, this is not where you belong. You actually belong to the village where your home is. Although you have been working here for 10 years, although a lot of cases that, you know, these peasant workers do not come to their homes for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, it's very common. So it becomes very interesting that I do not systematically only exclude you. I always want to include you, but only as laborers, as cheap laborers. For the social aspect of like comfort, like you know, the ability to buy this, to purchase the house, to live here permanently, to become a permanent resident of the city, don't even think about it. You do not, at least in the majority, the dominant majority of them do not have this. So domes actually produced this permanent temporariness. This is the dome that's where I lived. I also interviewed. Why do I say like single-sex dorms where I got special permission to go in and to do my interviews? I'm considering that dorms, in what way dorms start to be a kind of, dorms as physical space start to join this social relationship. Because when we think about these people, they are in their early 20s, some of them in their 30s and 40s, very strong or very quick with agile hands to do the work of, you know, piercing that mental space, mental piece into that plastic piece for 12 hours a day. But then also, they have these social needs that which are so common or so taken for granted in our everyday life. For example, you know, access to sex, and also the space that can support a kind of, you know, this access to courting, to make girlfriends, boyfriends, and able to have a relationship, and able to marry, and able to, you know, if married, to have their common family life. So this part, you know, my emphasis on sex is actually to show that how what we have taken for granted as part of our everyday life is here always mediated by this space. And in this way, the mediation is working for the capitalists' side, basically because that, okay, you have 5 minutes from this factory to walk to your dorm. And along the way, you have these wonderful places of cheap food, 3 yuan. And even if you go to a restaurant, it's 3 to 5, 3, 3, 3, 3, 5, 6, very cheap. And then, so every meal plus the resting time given to you will be like half an hour, and then you can come back to work again. In this case, we can say that dorms, are connected to these surrounding social spaces. When we talk about this, we need to know that Shenzhen now is an ultra-modern metropolitan, and then the GDP boasts like 10,000 US dollars per person per year. And then according to the international standards, it's called advanced society. But then more than 70% of the peasant workers' population were not counted. So basically they have their values added to this, divided by only 30% of the population that are regarded as the peasants. This is the phone booth. So when you look at the surroundings, you see that the whole area looks like, I'm almost thinking that if you view the space in a way, you enter the Disney World, you view Disney World, you may get the better understanding of the space. You can travel to the downtown area of the city and you are so fascinated with this familiar surrounding of shops, of all kinds of luxury products. But then when you enter this space, the infrastructure is so good, the road is so wide, but then what you can only see is the telephone booths and also the vendors, street vendors. Actually, if you have the mini card from your cell phone, you give them $1, 1 yuan, they can download to you like 50 counterfeit songs. So that's maybe the entertainment that these guys can have. And also you enter the dorm. The dorm is so organized, and they have hired a person, also a peasant worker, to be the dorm guard. Consider the western space of your living space. It's your castle, it's where your privacy is. But then in here, it is actually an accessory of the factory. A part where the factory can extend its order into. A part also the social relations that is centered on production can actually enter this space of livelihood. What you saw here is actually after the 14 suicides from Foxconn at the beginning of this year, January 15th or something. 150 peasant workers mounted this 5th floor, top of the 5th floor from Wuhan, another factory, Foxconn factory store, and just threatened to jump from there. Okay. So what I say is that they have come up with this basic idea of using space with their bodies at stake and as the stake to gamble with you guys. Okay, so if you are going to give me better working conditions and better wages, I'm not going to jump. But if you do not say anything, who knows what will happen? Let's just say who got the patience here. So in the end, my conclusion is materiality mediates sociality. Nothing social can be isolated from materiality, and materiality is never just neutral. mediates class identity, informing peasant workers' class identity. Materiality is divided in this study into region and space of norms, and materiality expands our understanding of sociality. Everything is social is at the same time has to be mediated by material. How materiality is used in formulating social processes has great importance in imagining social changes. So overall, what I'm trying to say is that now that we can see that capitalists or the stakeholders of the society have used spatiality and materiality in such systematic ways, although we have not got into the depths of its analysis. In a more general way, we can say that any social relationship is mediated by materiality and by spatiality. Then when we talk about social issues, if we also analyze really the rules of materiality and sociality, have we already added some very powerful weapon into our arsenals of